Hi, this is David Miller, and I'm here with the first in a series of 3 mini-lectures on Philip Pullman's novel, The Amber Spyglass. Today we'll start by mapping the action. The pattern of the action in The Amber Spyglass is a lot more intricate than the first 2 volumes of the trilogy. Even the complex symmetries of The Subtle Knight are simple in comparison. To me, this is intriguing. I think it's because there are so many actors, so many plot lines converging in the grand finale. The core of the novel features 2 extended episodes: the battle at the Himalayan cave where Mrs. Coulter has hidden Lyra, and Lyra's subsequent journey with Will through the world of the dead. These central episodes are framed by the final battle between the forces of Metatron and Lord Asriel on one side, and 2 sets of scenes, one parallel and one chiasmic on the other, and I'll explain when we get there why I'm calling them that. The final battle scene is in many ways the climax of the plot, but Pullman creates an alternative climax in a series of chapters that follow the battle, set in the world of the Mulefa. This cluster is followed by the denouement, in which the main characters return to their own worlds. The pattern formed by these clusters of chapters starts to emerge more clearly if you look at the numbers. The core episodes are made up of 5 chapters each. The final battle and the chiasmic series comprise 4 chapters each. The parallel opening series contains 6 chapters organized into corresponding groups of 3. The climax occupies 4 chapters, and the denouement 3. The pattern is almost, but not quite, perfectly symmetrical, as these clusters form 3 groups, the first and second composed of 10 chapters each, and the third 11. Now, if you look at the chapter numbers in the left-hand column here, you'll see that there are gaps, so let's take a look at those. Chapter 16 introduces Lord Asriel's secret weapon, the Intention Craft. Chapter 17 shows Mary Malone inventing a lens that will let her see dust. Together, these chapters introduce the key tools that will be needed to resolve the action: a weapon for the battle and a spyglass for scientific discovery. These 2 tools correspond to the 2 plot climaxes, the battle scene and the rescue of Dust. Chapter 20 interrupts the journey through the underworld with Mary's ascent to the canopy of the wheelpod trees, counterpointing Lyra and Will's descent underground with Mary's rise to the highest point in her world. I think this is a brilliant move. It breaks up the dreary and oppressive scenes set in the underground world of the dead with the freedom, the high-altitude daring, and, if you noticed this, the erotic bliss in Mary's adventure atop the canopy of trees. Chapters 24 to 27 form another cluster. It is here that we find the turning point in the action, leading to the climax of the final battle, and then the discovery by Will and Lyra of, let's call it adolescence. We will see that these intervening chapters link to the other clusters in very interesting ways. First, though, let's go back to the beginning, because these chapters, in their role as transitions or interruptions between major plot movements, turn out to be extending a pattern that begins in the opening series of parallel scenes. We start with a set of 3 chapters that take up the action where it left off at the close of Volume 2, with Will and Lyra separated. The first chapter shows us Lyra asleep in a hidden cave, held captive, but also tenderly cared for by her mother. The second chapter returns to Will, where we left him on the mountainside after his discovery that Lyra is missing. The third picks up Serafina Pekkala on her way to tell Yorick Burnison that Lee Scoresby has been killed. The next set of 3 begins once more in the cave, with Alma's discovery that Mrs. Coulter is herself the evil enchanter keeping Lyra asleep. Chapter 5 introduces us to Lord Asriel and his fortress, while in Chapter 6, Father Gomez sets out from Geneva on a mission to assassinate Lyra. At this point, all the principal actors, except Mary Malone, have been set in motion on the paths they will pursue. But there's another aspect to the pattern in this opening series, for each chapter is followed by a fragment of Lyra's dream as she lies asleep in the cave. These fragments are interrupted by the chapters, in mid-sentence actually, which it's a striking effect, but they do form a continuous text, a dialogue set in the world of the dead that is carefully coordinated with the action of the intervening chapters. First, we find Roger calling to Lyra from the vast, featureless plain where the ghosts of the dead suffer their false eternity, the emptiness of an existence without time. This fragment introduces the goal of Lyra's quest to save Roger from the death to which she unwittingly led him at the end of Volume 1. Her promise to Roger, "I'll get us out of here," is interrupted by Chapter 2, featuring Will and his attendant angels. When the dialogue resumes, Lyra tells Roger about Will. Then she mentions Seraphina and Yorick, who appear in Chapter 3. Following Chapter 3, Roger asks Lyra where she is and expresses his fear of Mrs. Coulter. That sets off an alarm in Lyra's dreaming mind as she realizes that she is dreaming and doesn't know where her mother is. Chapter 4 then takes us to Alma's discovery of the truth about Mrs. Coulter and Lyra's drugged sleep. In the next fragment, Lyra is urgently trying to awaken, as we've just seen her struggle to do in the preceding scene. Roger is afraid that when she awakens, she won't believe the dream is real. Lyra's fierce declaration that she will remember the dream is interrupted by Chapter 5, featuring Lord Asriel's immense fortress in the far north. The correspondence here is less obvious, but Lyra and her equally determined father represent the twin forces, one spiritual and one military, that will free Roger and change the universe. And so Roger's face reflects a sense of hope that none of the other dead experience. The next chapter, set in Geneva, interrupts Roger's answer when Lyra asks why he has hope. "Because you're Lyra." And so Chapter 6 introduces us to Fathers MacPhail and Gomez planning the death of Lyra. It closes with Father MacPhail instructing Father Gomez to let Mary lead him to Lyra. In the fragment that follows, Lyra feels the burden of her destiny, of what it means that she is Lyra, and is comforted by the thought of Mary Malone. This fragment links the 6 chapters of the parallel opening series to the chiasmic series that follows. It's an example of the way some patterns overlap with others in the final volume, which makes the overall pattern of the action so much more complex. Chapter 7, in which Mary Malone becomes Mary alone, interrupts this linking fragment just as Lyra's thoughts turn to the one person she knows she can trust. Chapter 7 straddles 2 patterns because it completes one series while beginning another. Mary is the last in the series of protagonists discovered as they set out on their peculiar quests, and so the chapter in which she enters the world of the Mulefa is followed by the concluding fragment of Lyra's dream. This fragment consists of a single phrase, "Because he's Will," that echoes and matches Roger's declaration of his trust in Lyra. Then, of course, Chapter 8 resumes where Chapter 2 left off, as Will makes his relentless way toward Lyra, accompanied by the most petulant spirit in the entire angelic host. Will joins forces with Yorick in Chapters 8 and 9. At the close of Chapter 9, 3 forces are converging on the cave where Lyra sleeps. One, sent by the church, bent on killing her. A second, sent by Lord Asriel, bent on defending her. And a third, led by Will and Yorick, determined to rescue her from the other 2. As we've already seen, the impending battle will form one of the main central actions of the plot. But before we get there, Chapter 10 takes us back to Mary and the mysteries of the Mulefa world, beginning, ominously, with the arrival of Father Gomez in the world of Cittàgazze as he follows Mary's trail, and ending with the news that the wheelpod trees are dying. Now, I call this series chiasmic because 2 chapters about Mary frame 2 others following the action of will. Chiasmus is a Greek word based on the Greek name for the letter X, chi, that is used as a technical term for any formal arrangement that follows the pattern AB, BA, as you see these pairs of chapters do. And if you look back at the diagram of the pattern of the action in the entire novel, you'll see that it too is organized chiasmically. Next time we'll continue mapping the action, beginning with Chapter 11 and the battle at the cave.